Well, hello everybody and welcome to our another PCC4U Educator Webinar. It's lovely to have you join us today and good to see some familiar faces and also some new faces as well. And we're hosting the webinar today from QUT in Meanjin in Brisbane, and just want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners. So we're just going to play our short video. Thank you, Karen.
QUT acknowledges the First Nations owners of the lands on where we gather today and pay our respects to the elders, laws, customs and creation spirits of this country. For thousands of years, the First Nations owners have gathered to share their knowledge and stories. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and acknowledge the important role they play within our communities. We recognise their long and continuing connection to country, the lands, winds and waters throughout Australia. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, researching and learning.
Just to let you know as well, if you hear a noise in the background here, there's somebody walking in the ceiling above me. So I'm really got my fingers crossed that no one drops out of the ceiling on top of us. Hopefully that all dies down in a little while. Yes, so we just wanted to welcome you today and also want to give you a chance to make your acknowledgement to country. We recognise that people are coming to us here from many different lands and places around Australia. So if you would like to just put a short introduction into the chat, you can make your acknowledgement to country in there as well. While you're doing that, I'll just introduce the team. My name's Sharon Wetzig, and myself and Karen Wynne, who's there waving at you, is we are from the Pepper and PCC4U projects, and we work in the learning and development coordination roles. We're also joined by Kylie Ash, who you can see on screen as well, the National PCC4U Project Manager. And today we have a special guest with us, Helen Woodbridge from Pepper Tasmania. We're going to be hearing from Helen shortly. Thank you, Helen. She's put her acknowledgement into the chat, so welcome. So we'll give you a little bit of time to do that. And also just wanted to let you all know that we are recording the webinar today. So if you'd prefer not to be recorded, then we just ask you to turn your camera and microphone off. But of course, if you're happy to be recorded, then we'd love to see your face and continue to interact with you, and you can ask questions, etc. I think that's all of the kind of announcements for today. So I'm going to hand over to Kylie now, who's going to do a little bit of setting the scene in terms of our topic for today. Thanks, Kylie.
Thanks very much, Sharon, and welcome everyone. I've just popped up a slide there, so hopefully you can all see that. And I guess really focusing here today on care workers, but acknowledging that a lot of that care is occurring in the aged care sector. So I thought I'd really just set the scene by providing a little bit of that background and why we're here today and why is this work so important, and really why is the aged care workforce so crucial to the delivery of high quality palliative care in aged care and the community, ensuring that the older Australians can receive the care that they need when they need it. So just in terms of some of the situations and the facts at the moment, currently we know that 1/3 of all deaths in Australia occur in residential aged care facilities. So that is where the care is needed, palliative care is needed. And as Australia's population ages and the number of people who are using aged care services will continue to increase, and the demand for palliative care is only going to increase as well in community and residential aged care. The Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety's final report, which is no surprise to anyone here, the evidence heard that during too few people are actually receiving evidence-based end-of-life care and palliative care. And so as a consequence, people are experiencing unnecessary pain, untreated symptoms, or indignity in their final days, weeks and months. So what is it that are some solutions and some positive outcomes here? And really the Royal Commission recognised that there is a significant role that palliative care can actually play in aged care, and the need for it should actually be core business. So many of you on the line here, that will come as no surprise. They stated that palliative care and end-of-life care, like dementia care, should be considered core business for aged care providers. People at the end of their lives should be treated with care and respect. Their pain must be minimised, their dignity maintained, and their wishes respected. Their families should be supported and informed. One of the strategies to inform and to ensure this high quality palliative care is core business for aged care services was recommendation 80, that compulsory dementia and palliative care training for aged care workers is in place. And there have also been calls for mandatory minimum qualifications for care workers. In particular, the Certificate 3 in individual support was identified. So that really should come as no surprise. But what we do acknowledge also is that this is challenging. It's all good and well to have these recommendations, but we acknowledge that there are significant sector challenges and that there are a number of barriers, and we certainly don't want to be another one of those challenges that are being presented to services. Care workers are challenged with their professional development pathways and having the, I guess, motivation and career pathways to support education and the need for education. Accessing clinical placements, we hear is very challenging in health services for students. And also there's been a number of changes and reviews of the current training packages and those qualifications. And so there's perhaps there's an uncertainty in the sector as well. And of course, I don't have to tell anyone here that COVID has certainly impacted the ability for education to be front and centre priorities when really you've got facilities that have been sanctioned for their activities because of staff challenges, staff changes, sick leave, and being able to release health workers to actually participate in studies. So we acknowledge this. There are a range of national palliative care project resources that can provide education, but we acknowledge that this can also add to perhaps sometimes that level of sense of overwhelming. Where do you start? Some facilities also don't have dedicated educators and managers and are struggling to put in place meaningful education in environments that have time pressures. Will this meet the requirements of our regulatory bodies? And how do you get the best bang for your buck, so to speak? So on the screen are just a handful of the reputable National Palliative Care Project activities which provide education resources for the aged and community sectors that I just thought I'd quickly highlight. And these are being used by both health services and registered training organisations to support their education. If I just start around the bottom left there, so Talking End of Life is a resource that shows how to talk to people with an intellectual disability about end of life. It's a great e-learning resource. We have, of course, the PEPA and iPEPA resources that offer clinical placements and with specialist palliative care services or interactive workshops. The ACPA, Advanced Care Planning Australia, delivers a range of online courses, face-to-face workshops and webinars for those interested in learning more about advanced care planning. The little houses in the top right is the Caring at Home project logo, and it supports carers and families to help manage the breakthrough of symptoms using safe subcutaneous medicines for the person at home. We then have the Palliaged, it's the Palliative Care Education and Practice Information resource for the Australian aged care sector. It comes with an app and a lot of resources. And of course, Peacock is the little 3 teardrops in the corner. palliative care outcomes collaboration aims to improve palliative care patient and carer outcomes, and it provides tools for care workers to use. And of course, in the middle there, what we're here today to have a talk about is the PCC4U Care Worker Toolkit, which we'll be highlighting today. Now, when I said we try and make life a little easier and we don't want to overwhelm, this is one of the strategies that our project has used to bring a lot of these resources together. And it's a resource that you can use as well now, the PACE Palliative Care Education Directory, to actually filter and have a look through all of these resources and search for the right resources that you're looking for the right people, at the right approach to develop the right capabilities. And we've partnered with all of the national palliative care projects to collate all of the education resources here. So over 200 comprehensive resources. You're able to use filter functions to find your resource. You can also search with the keyword search and save and share the results of that search as well. So just for example, if you're able to go onto the site, you can search for aged, and there are 69 results that you're able to access. So that's just one example there. And you can then have a look at the resource by filtering the audience. So you can choose care workers, the type of resource that you're trying to find, or the mode of delivery as well. Is it CPD certified? Is it a workshop? Those sorts of things. And you end up with a page that's similar to this, or that is like this for the specific resource. And you're able to decide, is this the resource that's going to meet the needs for my either professional development or to use as a teaching resource as well. So that's just an example of one of the ways that we've provided some information for you that you can use in the aged care sector and to support care worker education. Obviously, that was just a very quick snapshot of where we're at with our with the education, palliative care education in aged care. But it'll be good now to hear from someone actually in the field. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Kylie. Getting myself and Helen up on the screen there for everybody. So really privileged to have Helen spending some time with us today. She has got a very busy workload at the moment, and we appreciate that she's taken some time out of that to share her wisdom with us. Helen, as I said before, is the PEPA manager for Tasmania. And she's kind of a one-man band, aren't you, Helen, down there?
Yeah,
running a lot of different programs and education. And I've been privileged to work with Helen over the last few years in my role here. And I realised just what a passion Helen has for palliative care education, and particularly for care workers and disability support workers in that area too. So she was an obvious choice to have come and speak with us today. And we're just going to spend about the next 15-20 minutes having an open conversation. And I've got some questions for Helen, but I really encourage you too, if you have questions you want to ask, you can pop them into the chat, or we'll have a bit of time at the end for people to ask questions as well. So just to get us started, I thought I'd ask Helen to tell us a little bit about your background in palliative care education, how you, well, maybe not the whole story, but, you know, how did you get into it? What are you doing now? Give us a bit of that story. Thanks.
well, the silly thing is that in 2016 I retired, but then I got bored, you know, a couple of months later, and then the Aboriginal Project Officer position for PEPA came up. So I threw my hat in the ring and I won the job. And so that was one day a week, and I thought, this is nice. And then, you know, over the next 18 months, I went on a huge learning curve about palliative care because I didn't have a background in palliative care. And then the C&E position came up, and I threw my hat in the ring for that. And yeah, I won that. And yeah, then I'm on a more of a steep learning curve. So hence where I am now. So I've been in this particular role now in varying capacities for about 6 years, and I've really enjoyed it. I've become very passionate about it. And as Sharon said, you know, specifically around providing education opportunities for care workers, and in more recent times for disability support workers, because, you know, they've opportunities for disability support workers have been very few and far between in relation to palliative care. You know, understanding what it is and what it isn't, you know, and where their role might be. So, yeah, that's been an exciting opportunity to work with one of the key stakeholders in the state, Live Tasmania, and they've got a really great education program under the Healthy Dying for People with Disabilities and initiatives. So, yeah, so we've got a couple more workshops to deliver up until November, I think it is, and then they've got to get busy and start writing reports to funding bodies and the like. So yeah, and then, you know, they've also developed a really, really useful toolkit that disability service providers, even healthcare providers and the like, could possibly implement back within their own settings as well. It's got some very useful resources in it that everybody can use. So yeah.
Oh, great. So you've been on a journey of from one thing to the next, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So given that experience then, Helen, what do you see as the role of care workers in delivering palliative care?
Well, I think I'm not sure that I've been delivering online learning programs for care workers, both within the aged care setting and in community settings, because a lot of, you know, residential care facilities do have a community component attached to them now. So it's providing access to, you know, a workshop series that, you know, is not only looking at the principles of palliative care, but looking at basic communication, providing care, advanced care planning, looking at end-of-life care, as well as looking at some of the ethical considerations, as well as, more importantly, caring for yourself as well, because we all know that if we don't look after ourselves, we can't possibly look after those in our care adequately. But, you know, and I also recognise that when it comes to care workers, whether they be disability focused or aged care focused, is that, you know, that they build up really significant relationships with the people that they care for and support, and that they're also there and witness the changes that occur in the folk that they're caring for, whether they be, you know, pronounced, or whether it's, you know, that the subtlety that often goes with it. And so they're an important witness to that. And I guess, you know, instilling in them the confidence to say, you know, through the programs that, or education sessions, is that, you know, if you are noticing, you know, this, that and the other, then please do report it up to your supervisors, because there is something going on that's really, really important that people need to be aware of and may need to act upon. And I guess that's where the stop and watch tool that got developed as part of the disability package through Live is that, you know, if you identify 3 symptoms, you must tell your supervisor or your manager, and it'll go from there. But, you know, it's also, I had a participant in recent times say, you know, going through the learning program over the 6-week period was really, really beneficial, because it helped give them the confidence to say, okay, there's something going on here, and to report that up, to have the confidence to know what to say to the folk around the person that they're caring for, etc. So that they found it invaluable. One person has actually looked after 3 people who have died, but was able to provide that necessary level of comfort and support to them, but also to be, you know, an empathetic listening ear, because more often than not, it's allowing people to tell their stories, and just having somebody listen and validate their life story is so vitally important too, because we all know that those connections are really, really important, and especially when you're working within the palliative care setting. You know, we don't, as humans, we don't function very well in isolation, but so that's why these connections are really, really important, you know, as people start their journey towards end of life.
Yeah, and so it sounds like, you know, what part of what you're doing is really helping people learn to trust their own instincts a little bit, and their own, you know, a bit of self-confidence and self-belief about, you know, what they know. You were telling me earlier about some of the challenges in terms of people being wary of or reluctant to sort of think about palliative care, be exposed to palliative care. How have you approached that in your education?
Well, we live in death-denying times. You know, it's conversations that are held behind closed doors more often than not. So people have feared having those conversations because of the range of emotions that it might evoke in them. So it's about opening up doorways for opportunities for those conversations to come out into the open. And we sort of found that, you know, the conversations around advanced care planning actually help that. Yeah. And then we also have, you know, people telling their individual stories that, yeah, it was really, really hard. And, you know, we've been trying to broach the subject for, you know, several years, but, you know, then one day something happened and, you know, the door was open, so we started to have a conversation, and it was really valuable. And you know, we've got an outcome now that the family is happy with, that the person is happy with. We know that when it came to disability support workers, we know that we know from the research that the support workers were really, really apprehensive, and they became really anxious and fearful of having conversations around dying and death, let it alone supporting somebody who might have been on end-of-life journey who you know, they were working with. And so they tried to you know, steer away from that as much as they could. But the thing is, I guess it's saying to, and I guess this sort of crosses over into the aged care sector as well, whether it be in residential aged care or community, is that, you know, you guys become an important part of the palliative family, so to speak, because, you know, you have been there, you've provided comfort, care and support to your person. But then you're also there to provide that same level of comfort and support as this person journeys towards end of life. You are familiar, you're like a really good friend, you know, and again, it's that connection, I think. Yeah. Again, it comes back to that connection. Yeah.
So in your workshop sessions, tell us a bit about how they work and what kind of approaches you use to, I guess, one, help people feel comfortable, but also keep them engaged in the learning.
Well, one of the big things that came out was that we do our learning online. And we've broken it into a series of 2-hour workshops. And when we're doing the aged and community care workshops for care workers, that's delivered over a 6-week time frame. And to support that, I put together a workbook, because back in those days, I didn't know you could share videos. Well, more specifically, the audio that went with the videos. So I had to come up with another way to facilitate that. So yeah, I've since learned that you just got to tick a button, which has made a difference. But the workbook sort of takes them through all the activities that we do for the series, and we use the Padlets. And I really love the Padlets, that which is a great application that Pepper's gotten hold of. So in the workbook, I provide the links to the Padlets so that participants can access all the resources that are on the Padlet, and they can download and save them to their desktop, or share with mates, etc. So that's been a very valuable tool.
Yes, you actually. Sorry. I was going to say, you actually post them hard copy resources in the mail, so that they're sitting at their computer with a hard copy workbook to go from. Yeah.
Because I found that a lot of people are not always accessing the program from their computers, but they're accessing it from their phones. And if they're accessing from phones, it's a challenge to access the Padlets at the time. So they can double up, they can use the paper-based workbook to assist in that learning process. And plus they're invited to talk like we are now, or put their commentary in the chat section of the webinar. The other thing is that my groups are only small. It can range from 5, it can go up to 13, 18. And I think the biggest one I've had is 25 for a workshop series. But I do appreciate that some of our participants pardon me, work night shift. So if that's the case, then I'll record a separate session for them, and then I'll send it out to them on USB. And of course, any of the resources that I refer to throughout that sessions program, I'll also do a mail out, so they end up with a hard copy of that resource as well. So and participants are really appreciative of that. So yeah, for each workshop series, I can expect to do 3 mail outs so that people can get their hands on the resources. And there's a multitude of resources out there, and they're great.
And you send them like the Dying to Talk discussion starter cards and resources like that I guess that's not only a resource for them in their learning sessions, but they'll take that to work and show other people, and talk through some of those things perhaps with family and friends. So it's kind of a bigger audience than what you're just interacting with online.
Yeah. And people appreciate that. And I also refer them to Palliative Care Australia website, because that's where you can access the Dying to Talk cards in their various formats. You can do the online version of working out what's most important, very important, or not important. And you can print that sheet off so that you can refer back to it and have meaningful conversations with family members or significant others. And people are really interested in voluntary assisted dying and the laws that are related to each state. I don't think territories come into VAD because they're governed by the Commonwealth, so I don't think I think that's right. Northern Territory and ACT have access to that, sadly. But all the other states, I think, are on board now with VAD legislation. Tasmania's comes into being 23rd of October, I think. So there's fact sheets available on what it is and what it isn't, what it can do, what it can't do. And it outlines the process, so participants will get a copy of that. I also send out a copy of, the end of life for clinicians, because they did a really detailed information sheet on VAD laws within Australia, so they get a copy of that. They can even get copies of the learning resources for care workers, or if they're working within the disability sector, then they get the disability support worker learning resource as well. So there's a multitude of resources that I send out, so that it complements what we're going over within the individual sessions.
Yes.
So, which makes a difference, because it also backs up you know, what's actually in the training.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from an education point of view, you're providing people with a range of ways to interact with the learning content and material. It's a huge amount of work from your end in terms of preparing and mailing out. And I would like to point out, Helen doesn't have admin support either in her role, so she's maybe the same as many other people. But I think what you find is that kind of commitment really does pay off, that you will find people engaging more because you've given them a huge range of ways to engage.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a question in the chat I've just seen from Sarah. How do participants usually come to know about the training or encouraged to take part? Are there any gaps?
Okay, so the training or education opportunities, I generally do a mail out late January, early February, of what the education program for PEPA is going to be over the year. And I also so every residential aged care facility, education institution, like the main ones, like down here, it's TAFE, Work and Training, Langford, Mosaic, etc. And the hospital, community nursing centres throughout Tasmania received a hard copy of the flyers. I also put it on the PEPA website under the PEPA workshops, and so people are able to register through Eventbrite. So I think I've still got opportunities for the July series of workshops, and then there's another series in September. So if people want to come up, want to register. Are there any gaps? Potentially. A lot of people, we do have a range of professions that take part in these programs, even though it's targeted at care workers. But I do find that I have registered nurses participating and enrolled nurses. And look, I'm okay with that, but I just let them know that the content is at like an introductory level into the palliative care space. However, the clinical nurse educator that I often work with the specialist palliative care service, we are looking at developing that next level series of workshops for professional people and enrolled nurses, registered nurses who are out working in the community, who want to know more about, treating, managing, diagnosing symptoms, that type of thing, and look at medications and syringe drivers. So that's that next level stuff. From time to time, we do run face-to-face workshops, but we're sort of keeping them more for study days for that next level education program, because there's only so many dollars in the bucket now. So, but all the basic education is done through the online format. Although, I have a lot of participants who say that, having a face-to-face now and then would be great. And I must admit that having that face-to-face interaction is really beneficial, because you get to connect and interact with people, and even in a learning environment, that is really important too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Helen. One other question that we were thinking about is when you start a series, do you do something with the participants to try and find out what their background is and their other learning experiences they've had, or what their learning needs might be? Or do you find it's kind of they don't know what they don't know?
I think I premise it on the assumption that they don't know what they don't know.
Okay.
I do when they more often than not, they'll do the they'll complete the application form for Pepper.
Yeah.
Because Eventbrite doesn't give you all the information.
Yeah.
But using the old Pepper form, that's just an idea.
Yeah.
It's got a space on there that tells me what their role is.
Okay.
Which is really beneficial.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So so I do have a lot of community-based care workers undertake.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I guess that the biggest thing is what I've learned over the last couple of years in delivering a program like this is that often employers don't have the capacity to release staff to undertake these education programs. And I think, Kylie, you alluded to that. There's no dollars for education of care workers, and yet we know that, what is it, standard 8 of the palliative care standards is that, you've got to have a suitably educated and qualified team of staff to provide palliative care to those that you're caring for and supporting. And I have, on more than one occasion, I've had several care workers undertake the program in their own time at their own expense. And I think that's really sad, and it's probably a reflection on what's currently occurring, out there in the community. But, it would be great if that could change, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Helen. I think Helen's staying for the rest of the webinar session. I didn't actually confirm that before, but if you do have more questions for Helen, we'll have a little bit more time after this next bit of the conversation. But I'm going to hand back to Kylie now, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the resources that PCC4U has to support education in this space. Thanks so much, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. And I think, we've got such a great team where the educators work across both PCC4U and Pepper, and really the experience that Helen shared was the ability for the learning resources and the learning guides and resources that have been developed centrally with Pepper, and Helen brings a lot of her own resources as well to that table, have been able to be used quite extensively. Did you want to say something else, Helen? Sorry.
No, I actually couldn't do what I couldn't achieve what I have without the support of Sharon and Karen and Jackie, sorry, not Jackie, Kate, and previous to them was Nicole and Sue. It's just been amazing. You come up with an idea and they'll support you in whatever way they can to bring those ideas to fruition.
Yeah, so
it's valuable.
The Pepper program is available, and it's a funded program for workshops and placements. We've just got a question in the chat there, and it's really for established health clinicians who are already working out there in residential aged care environments, community, and it has an opportunity for those staff who aren't working in a specialist palliative care area to be able to perhaps have an experiential learning in a placement environment, or as Helen is providing, workshop education for those staff to give them a overview and understanding of palliative care. We also do have reverse Peppers as well, and that's where an educator would go into an aged care environment. So they're using a lot of these resources. And I don't know, Helen, if you're actually using elements of the Care Worker Toolkit, but I know that there's some parts of it that over time have been embedded within parts of the CPD education as well. But what I thought I'd do is just provide a bit of an overview of the Care Worker Toolkit. I think half of you already have some sense of this resource, but the Care Worker Toolkit really was an extension of our original PCC4U work to provide a really consistent national approach to education in the vet sector for care workers. And the approach that we've taken is to align that to the units of competency. So we know that in the vet sector, we've got our units of competency that make up our training package, and we've mapped this specifically to CHC PAL 001. So PCC4U has developed a suite of resources that is mapped to that unit. We know that it's an elective in the Certificate 3, and it's a core within the Certificate for Ageing Support. We acknowledge that there's changes in the industry, and we're certainly keeping a very close eye on the work that Skills IQ is doing and the proposals for the new unit of competency coming in. And we've already done a lot of mapping, so we'll be responsive to any changes with that new work in the future. This is just an example of the mapping. Usually RTO, if there's any of the RTO members of the audience, usually get fairly happy when they see this document. What we've actually done is looked at the content. We've mapped areas of the content that align to performance criteria in the units of competency. And this, we understand, has been very helpful for validation processes in local environments. We also have the knowledge evidence mapped as well. It's just an example there, and this is available for users. Just as a quick overview of the resources, it's a suite of e-learning resources that are available via our learning management system. It's arranged into 5 topic areas with 16 sessions, e-learning sessions, and that content is evidence-based. It's been peer and consumer reviewed, and you're able to get a certificate of participation at the end of each session or at the end of the whole unit. We've used a variety of media resources within that. It's been developed in Articulate Rise, so if you're familiar with that, you'd know it's fairly interactive. We've been able to put film, video resources, PDFs, provide opportunities for clinical documentation. There's some quizzes as well, and really looked at different learning styles. So visual through our written content on the LMS, there's filmed case scenarios for the auditory learners and simulation scenario options for those kinesthetic learners as well. And we've also been able to, look at that engaging learners. The Articulate Rise has a lot of click and drop and turnaround, but so it's quite engaging, and it's also mobile responsive as well, which a lot of our students, as you said, Helen, a lot of the students are coming to you on their mobile phones, and they can come and go at any time as well. So that's just a very quick overview of the resources. The case scenario, I don't know if any of you have heard of Ben's story or looked at him. He's a man who's been diagnosed with lung cancer, and throughout the e-learning sessions, you follow Ben's journey through a series of videos throughout the Care Worker Toolkit, exploring different concepts in palliative care. And you also meet his wife and family, and also his care worker, and Jenny, and how she responds to this situation. I don't know, Helen, is that one of the videos? Do you use the videos around Jenny? I think they're quite realistic, and we get a lot of feedback that they're quite useful.
Yeah, I've used scene 1 and
I haven't got all of them listed there yet. Yeah, there's 17 individual videos. I couldn't fit it all on that screen.
Oh, there might be another one. I thought there was 3 that I used.
There's a great video where you've got a couple of care workers talking together and reflecting on how to approach a advanced care planning conversation, or, after Ben has died, and having that conversation around how that's made me feel and how do I cope. And you see them actually offering each other some peer support and strategies to work through that. So yeah, so the videos are embedded in through the e-learning modules, but they're also available on YouTube as standalone resources, because the way that we know that the learning needs to be flexible, and you need to be able to pick this up and use it as required with your students. How to access the resources? Go to our learning management system and then click on the big palliative care curriculum for undergraduates button. There's just a short registration process that you complete. All access is free. And then you can access the e-learning modules and deliver this however is relevant for your students. So we've no examples of this being delivered as face-to-face because it is in Articulate Rise. You've got a left navigation that you're able to pick and choose and jump from different parts of the resource to present different elements. Students can do this as self-directed learning or blended, and we know CPD activities are also being completed. We've got a lot of implementation support guides, so the curriculum blueprint, which summarizes all of the content, and the implementation guide is a big spiral bound document that we can post out to you as a doorstop if you like, but it also is available as a PDF, and it's got all of the content, and it's specifically targeted for educators because it's actually got some response prompts that you may want the students to consider. So where we've got a thinking point, we actually provide a little bit of a background response suggestions and some of the evidence that might sit underneath that information as well. We also, on the learning management system in our educator section, it's really worth going and having a look at the Care Worker Toolkit resources, where you're able to click on each of those tabs. You can get the implementation resources. You can also get the print resources, which involves the transcripts, and you can also get extra case scenarios as well. So this is an example here, the 2 extra case scenarios that we've got that sit outside of the e-learning, because we know that part of the assessment required a couple extra, it required 3 case assessments. So we've put 2 different case scenarios that you may want to use as accessible items potentially, or extra learning or CPD. So this is just a quick snapshot summary. It does go further in and provide some thinking points as well in those documents. So worth having a look at. So now I might just leave it to you. As you can see, this is just sort of a snapshot of some of the resources, clickable items. There's Jenny in the middle there, and the video scenarios. We use the Peacock's symptom assessment scale. We show examples of how to use that, and we also refer to the Palliative tip sheets, which are a fantastic, I don't know how long if you use the tip sheets, but an fantastic resource that the students can then use as a portfolio almost of evidence. And these are weaved right the way through all of the e-learning modules. And I do know of some RTOs who are using these as a sort of a assessment form of portfolio. But what we might do, are there any questions at this point? I might just stop sharing at the moment.
Carly, I've been answering a few questions in the chat, but I just realised I missed one from Helen actually. Would completing this entire e-learning provide a learner with an actual unit of competency? Did you want to just talk to that?
So what it will provide them with is the knowledge evidence, but in terms of the assessment, it still needs to have a RTO will put an assessment around this. So we have mapped this to in its entirety. We feel that yes, it does meet all of the unit of competency, performance criteria, and knowledge evidence. There's opportunities to learn all of that. It needs to be assessed though. And that's where we do know RTOs that have gone through the validation process and have succeeded in that using our resources.
Yeah, I also popped a link into the chat. I put the wrong one in first, apologies. But I've just put a direct link in there to the Care Worker Toolkit. So if you're already registered to use our LMS, then you'll be able to go straight there once you log in. If not, you just need to spend a few minutes creating an account, and then you can go directly to the Care Worker Toolkit resources.
Yeah, so Rose, yes, it can be definitely used for self-directed e-learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If anyone does have a question, you feel free to just unmute your microphone and talk to us. We're happy to hear your questions.
We're not too scary.
Or it might be. I haven't had anyone fall out of the roof yet, but it still sounds like it could happen any minute.
Might be a drop bear.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Where would you find the case studies? So are you after the YouTube elements?
Actually, I want to use some of the examples of case study. For example, if I want to show someone a care worker providing that palliative care, I need to change some of the information which has been currently used in my RTO. So just checking, where would I find that case study that you just mentioned earlier?
That's Ben's case study, is it? That runs all the way through on YouTube.
All right, so it would be on YouTube.
I'm just putting the link. That's the
Okay.
playlist for the Care Worker Toolkit case scenario. So this suite of 17 videos. What you can also do is have a look at our curriculum blueprint, which has listed each of the topics, and they're broken into their different e-learning modules, but it also aligns, it shows you where the different case scenarios fit. So it might be that you just want to look at a certain e-learning module which aligns to one of the concept areas and provides a certain part of the case scenario. If it's the other written out case studies that you're after, I think that might be the question as well. It's in the Learning Management System, Educator Community Hub, and I might just pop a direct link to that too, Sharon, because that's the care worker training resources. You didn't provide a link to that one, did you? You're muted.
Sorry, I was shaking my head.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'll put a link for that in
That's
the chat
okay.
now, the care worker training.
I've got that one there. That's ID 40.
Oh, great. Yep, you're done.
So if you click on the printable resources square in there, you're able to see the case studies, and there's care documentation as well. So a completed SAS. It really is quite a comprehensive suite of print resources that you can access that are embedded within the e-learning, but it's quite nice and easy. You don't have to scroll through all of the e-learning as well.
Okay, thank you.
We're sort of running out of time a bit, Sharon, to go through any further teaching and learning strategies. I don't know if, I mean,
I might just
I sent them direct to you, Sharon. I sent those links direct to you, not to the whole group. I'm sorry, Rose. I'll fix that.
We can do that again, but I might just share my screen with you, and I can show you the resources that we have specifically for educators in our learning and management system. So you do have to, register to have a look at this. But the web link is palliativecareeducation.com.au. And we have a section under the PCC4U resources called the Educator Community Hub, where you can find all the information and past recordings of our webinar series from last year and this year. We also have a new resource that I was going to show you a bit of today, but we've run out of time, so you'll have to go and have a little look. It's an e-learning module for educators in teaching palliative care. So we've really expect that that's probably about a 30 to 45 minute time commitment. So give you a really good overview of the PCC4U resources, as well as going into a little bit about, how do you teach palliative care? What are some of the ways you can engage people? How do you make it a safe environment? And also a little bit on technology and how you can use different technologies to help engage students in palliative care. We've also got our guide to simulation for educators, which is relatively new as well. And we ran our last webinar last month was on the simulation guide and some aspects of simulation there. And then as you scroll down, you'll see enrolled nurse training resources and then care worker training resources that Kylie was just mentioning. So when you go into our learning management system, you'll be able to find the care worker toolkit, which is all the student facing resources. And then if you come into the educator hub, you'll be able to find the various educator resources that we mentioned. So we'll probably put a link to this webinar through there as well. So if you ever need to go back in and this is our webinar last year about the toolkit. So we'll add this one in too. So there's that extra resource in there. But that may actually be all we can show you today. Kylie's just going to do a little bit more of a wrap up.
Oh, am I? Okay. Yes, I am. I was typing to someone. Grace,
sorry.
Get in touch with me if you'd like. I think that's part of our role is also, as I'll keep talking as I'm trying to put my PowerPoint back up. Part of our role is really to support educators to implement these resources. So Helen, you've been supported and you know what you're doing now. You're on your way. You've got it under control, but also you've had fantastic support from Sharon and Karen as well. And we offer that support to RTO educators as well. Ooh, get rid of my chat. So at any time you can contact us with any questions. I can set up a one-on-one session and I bring in Sharon or Karen as well, depending on the context, to spend some time with you, understand what it is that you need in your local environment and how we can best support you to develop up a curriculum using the PCC4U plus or minus other national palliative care resources in your education. All of this is available at no cost to your organisation. The Care Worker Toolkit in particular has been purpose built for use by RTO educators to deliver that unit of competency, but we know it's being used and we know that it has a place in continuing professional development through health services where you can really cherry pick those resources. And we've presented these resources in a way that you are able to actually take elements of them to present in short bursts of education or a longer education process as well. And I've already said that support for implementation is available from our team as well at any time. So that's pretty much the summary and wrap up. I would think we'd really appreciate any feedback that you have about this webinar. We're right bang on 3 o'clock now. So if you've still got time, it would be appreciated to just fill in our little poll, which I believe has jumped on the screen. And I will let Sharon do the final slide because she has this down pat.
Well, let's hope so. So yeah, we have put that poll up on the screen. If you have a moment to just fill that in, that helps us to know whether the kind of webinar sessions we're preparing and running are helpful and whether we should keep going, I guess, long term. Just on the screen at the moment, you can see how to access our learning management system, just a bit of information there. If you do enroll in the 2022 webinars course, then you'll get reminders about upcoming webinars and the Zoom link will just be emailed directly to you so you can find it easily. We try not to spam people through that, but just to give reminders, and we let you know when the recording's up as well. In terms of the next webinar, we are actually having a break in July. Kylie and I are fortunate enough to be presenting at the ANZAPAY conference on exactly the same date and time as our webinar was scheduled for. So we decided to take a break and we'll see you again in August. And I think that's all the notices and announcements, etc. Apart from just to say really huge thank you to Helen for giving up your time today and also the time in preparing to give us that information today. We really value what you've been able to share with us, and just want to encourage you in the work that you're doing and continue on, even though it's hard work and it's busy. You know, you're doing great things, and I'm sure it's really appreciated by the people in that sector. So thank you, Helen, and thank you all for coming along. We'll see you next time.